Welcome to the Open Era Podcast. My name is Devang and Simon. I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Simon Bushell on Championship Sunday. Bush, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going really, really well, Dev. It's gorgeous sunshine here in Vancouver. We have, after we threatened it last week to suggest that the snow was coming, we actually went in the opposite direction here on the West Coast, and it's 20 degrees here, amazingly enough.
Wonderful, wonderful stuff. It did actually kind of snow here today, so I'm not sure if you knew that or you're just trying to rub it in. But I was advised you had a bit planned off the top of this episode, and now I'm very curious what that means.
Okay, just for brevity's sake here, happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. And to celebrate happy St. Patrick's Day, here is my first ever Guinness.
Oh my gosh, okay.
I have never had a Guinness in my life, Dev.
Guinness Zero. I'm very curious to this. Is this new?
Zero.
I'm in the as a new connoisseur of non-alcoholic beers, I've not come across this one.
There you go, my best ASMR impression here. My first ever sample of a Guinness live on the podcast. Here we go, everyone.
He's drinking it, tasting, and
I mean, it's okay. It's quite nice, actually.
That drink has powered entire nations, sir. And it's great to see they're making a non-alcoholic version. Cool.
Got a little bit of Coke to it, maybe. Like a flat version of a Coke with slightly more metallic taste, perhaps.
It is kind of like a grown-up Coke, right? A bit.
I'm not sure this is my favorite drink in the world, I've got to say. But I'm glad I've now tried it.
It's the perfect drink you're going to have to nurse now in a mug as we go through what happened in Indian Wells.
Fuck me, I got to get through the whole of this thing. All right, here we go.
I was debating opening a Heineken Zero as well, but I feel like that would have been overkill as if we were doing some ad-free placement stuff. But how was Championship Sunday, sir? How'd you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it a lot. It actually, surprisingly enough, I think turned out to be a bit more shit, perhaps, than we were expecting it to.
Yeah.
I think maybe everyone used up all of their good matches in the semifinals as opposed to the finals. I think two damn squibs. Although I guess you could say in both finals are an interesting parallel to each other, aren't they? Where you have very competitive and very interesting first sets and then really not very competitive second sets. And in both situations, I guess kind of one more surprising than the other. I think anyone who's seen Maria Sakkari play over the last year wouldn't have been surprised that the second set of a final against Iga Swiatek ended up in a bagel in 6-love. I think the opposite is probably true in the men's final, though. I think if you were going to tell me that Carlos Alcaraz and Dani Medvedev were playing in a final, then I think you would have seen the octopus give up more of or put up more of a fight in a championship match. And it didn't turn out to be that way in the second set.
Yeah, and I think the kilometers ran for Dani Medvedev ended up catching up to him a bit. There was a bit of a I want to get out of here vibe in that second set, especially when he started yelling at a fan towards the end of that second set, which I kind of got. And I actually, where do you want to start, men's or women's, Bush? Because I have takes, but I'll follow you.
I mean, we just came off the men's final, right? I think so. Let's stay there just for recency's sake. Nothing to do with prioritizing, but mostly just because it's fresh in the memory.
So obviously Sinner Alcaraz was the big deal on Saturday, and we got the rain delay, which I think makes that first set kind of not real. I understand Jannik killed the ball and was looking unbeatable, Bush, but I do think it was sort of weird enough that maybe we could write that off and then see what happened in set 2 and beyond. And I didn't think Jannik looked that bad at the beginning of set 2 either, but a combination of a couple of things that looked like an injury was hampering him before he took a spill in that third set. But I mean, Carlos Alcaraz was full value there. He thrashed Zverev and he handled Medvedev. It's weird to say he needed this, but how much did Carlos Alcaraz need this, Bush?
I think actually a decent amount. I think it's easy to sit here and say that he's only 20 and he's been to 101, 2 Grand Slams, that he was going through a lull. I actually think it probably is quite an important title to him. And I only say that because his reaction to winning this and the roar that he let out at the end of the winning that first set against Danny Medvedev, I think was an indication that he really wanted this. He wanted this title badly. He's a defending champion, of course. I think it's a massive win for him. It's not been smooth sailing at all since Wimbledon last year. I think all of the numbers you can point at, and I think there's been so much said about the lack of titles, no titles, in fact. I think it's a big deal, Dev.
And I mean, like the people who had beaten him before, you could kind of explain it away or explain what happened, like Sinner in Beijing or Novak at the Tour Finals. But the Nicolas Jarry loss in Buenos Aires, you kind of raise your eyebrow a bit. And I think I mentioned on the Discord, this is probably now the ultimate cliche of, are they playing too much or what's with the schedule, as they work behind the scenes to completely alter all of these schedules. But I did kind of wonder why he was playing so much. And I did think perhaps it was to refine his mojo after what has been a trying couple months. And I say a trying couple months for him because he is in this stratosphere where I did find the crowd push, and not just on Sunday, but so heavily pro Alcaraz, even against Sinner as well. He's fully there in that regard. And I thought the atmosphere for Sinner Alcaraz was electric. That was great. But I do wonder, I mean, this is old man yelling at cloud territory for sure, but I did find myself saying, oh, wow, like I was already cheering for Med because I'm a Med guy, but oh, okay, like this is probably what it felt like when people were cheering against Federer and Nadal in those days, in the early-ish days.
People love Charlie. They really, really do.
A lot.
I think the welcoming embrace of the wider sporting world has really been stretched around Carlos Alcaraz at this point. I think it's undeniable that he is the most popular young player on tour. I know it's not a particularly high bar for him to eclipse when it comes to that, but he's electric. People find he's got a certain magnetism, a certain charm to him. And I asked this question in our Discord in that matchup between Sinner and Alcaraz. Where did people lean towards? Because I was actually really curious about that, because you have undoubtedly the two shining examples of the youngest players on the best young players on tour. And this is going to be a rivalry that stretches for many, many years. And I think we're starting to see who the public favors more, perhaps. I think Carlos has a little bit more star power than Jannik Sinner does. And I don't know whether that's fair or not, but maybe Alcaraz is just slightly flashier as a player in general. So maybe that's why it is. Yeah,
I can kind of see how people are saying like the Djokovic Nadal archetypes for Alcaraz and Sinner kind of following more of the Novak like angle or lead. But I do think there is something to that showman aspect. And I do think Jannik is way more out of his shell than I thought he would be even now. And that means that could even change, that could change even more. And I'm not saying he has to be something he's not to garner fandom, but I think he'll be okay. I think it's the other people who at one point, Daniil Medvedev was asking fans to cheer for him during a match, which I understand it's part of his shtick, but I do feel like we are in that kind of area as well, where there is that outpouring of love, and people have circled Carlos Alcaraz as their guy, and as they should, because he's awesome. But maybe I'm just surprised how quickly it happened.
I agree with you. I don't think there's anything about Carlos Alcaraz that Jannik Sinner doesn't have, honestly, in terms of ability to cheer for someone and an ability to, root for. And I think the same thing is also true of Danny Medvedev as well. I think maybe he's a bit more prickly.
I am someone who will defend him to the lengths of the earth. I will say I do think there is that prickliness that you alluded to. That's part of the charm. But I also think, like, for example, you had like a lot of youngsters in the crowd clearly pulling for Alcaraz. Then like the uber celebrities also pulling for Alcaraz, which I'm sure was sending some marketers into just a fever dream looking at this, because that's kind of it, right? Like you want someone that everybody can kind of buy into for whatever reason. And it does feel like Alcaraz is there. It's very important he keeps winning as well for this to hold on and grow. And that sounds like maybe too much pressure, but we're there, man. So the numbers are nuts. Like I think just looking at what he's done, Bush at his age in terms of the accolades, I think that's 5 Masters 1000s now already. It's equaling Nadal in that sense of attaining these numbers this early. I wonder what else there is to say about him, particularly this week. I will say I think Med playing at night the whole week and then playing in the daytime. He also played Tommy Paul very late into Saturday night because of that rain delay. Did not help at all. He did look gassed.
He definitely did. So did Jannik Sinner, actually. He looked completely and utterly shagged at the end of that semi-final matchup. And I don't know whether or not that's testament to how much Carlos Alcaraz got into Jannik Sinner's head and also in Danny Medvedev's head as well. Like, he's such a good player at this point. And he's so relentless in terms of how he hits his forehand and consistently goes for his shots. And I think maybe if you're looking for a real positive of how this is going to translate to the next part of the season, he was hitting with sheer ferocity on that forehand side in a way that he has not been since he's sort of gone into this slump. He knows this tournament obviously incredibly well. I think he feels very at home there in terms of his ability to relate to the fans, and he knows that court very, very well. Just a really good week for him. And also, in general, you have to argue on the ATP side, a good week for men's tennis as well, because you got some really good storylines and a lot of attention of the sporting world was focused on it.
Yeah, the only thing was, I think the rain delay was horribly timed, but we did get bees. The bee incident heard around the world. I felt like it was definitely a sign that this is what we deserve for letting Zverev keep going. That a horde of bees would descend on court as an ultimate sign that we have done wrong. But I don't know what did you make of B-Gate quickly, Simon?
I thought it was one of the funnier things that I've seen on a tennis court in some time, not least because of Alcaraz's reaction to it and his seeming love of the individual who came to his aid. The B-Man, multiple social media posts, not just one. I think we're up to about 5 at this point of him showering praise. So it's great. I've never seen that on a tennis court, I've got to say. So that was kind of
just don't go digging into his Facebook likes or posts. I'm sure there'll be something horrifying. No, I'm joking. I'm sure B-Man is great, and he won't be milkshaked out anytime soon. There's a great piece in The Defector by a friend of the show, Geary, Nathan, and Patrick Redford. They interviewed B-Man. Very good look. Very cool guy. B-Man.
B-Man.
Shouts to bees. We need them to keep pollinating. So let's protect them. And if they want to take over tennis courts, so be it. Better than pickleball. Let's go to Iga Swiatek, because that is a segue, Simon. I read this in Tumani Carriol's wrap-up piece at The Guardian, and he mentioned a mark for sustained greatness being whether a player has reached 80% wins in their matches. Serena did it, Novak did it, Roger, Rafa, Sharapova, Venus Williams, until they hit the downswing of their careers. But with this win and with this title, Simon, she is 216-53, which is 80% on the dot. The ultimate marker of greatness. I did think this match, for a second there, it looked like Maria Sakkari had a window to making a real game of it when she came back from that hole in the first set. I think she leveled it at 4-4, and then Iga went on to lose only 2 points on her serve after that. Just a really clean display from someone who, a little bit like Carlos, in the sense that obviously we all know what she's got, and doubting her is very foolish. But in the what have you done for me lately kind of sphere, it was nice for Iga to remind us, Bush, that the level that she can reach is streets ahead most on her day.
This was domination from the world number one. This was a destruction of a field, and I think everyone should be terrified of the pole going into the clay court season. 20 games dropped across the 6 matches this week. 5 sets, which were either 6-1 or 6-love. Absolutely dominating, blowing the doors off the field. She did not play any scrubs. Like, these were not losers that she was playing. These were not also-rans. These were not players in the top 200. These are really, really good top-level WTA players. And she was head and shoulders above the field. I thought it was a really interesting week as well for the WTA in general. Like, some of the losses that we saw and some of the players that kind of came up and made the latter stages of this tournament, and some players who did not, which I'm sure we can come on to in a second. But there is no doubt, again, Iga Swiatek is she never went away, but she's back again, Dev, and it looks terrifying.
Decent cushion rebuilt atop the rankings as well. And since February and when she won in Qatar, I mean, this is exactly what you want to see as an Iga Swiatek fan, Bush. Super clean. I didn't think Maria Sakkari played all that poorly in the first set, but it did feel like the belief was totally gone after that domination towards the end of that opening stanza. And then baseline dominance, level raised. I don't think this was necessarily a bad day for Maria Sakkari. I think Iga Swiatek was just that good. We'll get back to Iga, Bush, but Maria Sakkari changed her coach, Simon, ahead of this year, not year, I guess, but recently David Witt now is in charge. We saw a lot of the behind the scenes stuff in Breakpoint last year, RIP, Breakpoint. But for all the psychology stuff and like all the behind the scenes stuff that Maria is doing to work on her game, that new couch bounce in any sport, I love the old axiom being true that she looked like someone who has had a lot of success at this tournament, which she had. So I wonder, should we have been that surprised that she was there? Because I know I was, but she plays really well in Indian Wells. I think she was in the semis last year, final the year before that.
Well, it really depends on what you're going off and how you like to prognosticate on the sport of tennis. If I had to give you a guess, I shouldn't give you a guess because you probably know the answer to this, but regardless, let's go with it. Let's continue the bit. How many match wins do you think that Maria Sakkari had coming into this Indian Wells tournament in 2024?
This year? Oh, 3?
2.
Oh, God. Wow. Yeah.
She has won twice on the tour level in 2024. So to say that this is a surprise, I think is a bit of an understatement.
Yeah, if I told you that Coco Gauff and Maria Sakkari would contest the semifinal at Indian Wells in the year 2024 in March, I think the strong belief would be that Coco Gauff is coming through that. The last she did not. And I think Sakkari also took out your fave, Emma Navarro Bush as well, which was an excellent match, I thought, in the quarterfinals. But that's a good week for her. I'm glad to see her back, and let's see what this partnership with David Wood can do for Maria Sakkari, because I think the idea of be relaxed, have fun, as like a coaching ethos sounds excellent. And that seems like what he was saying early on. But I think it's the after that part and what Maria can do to put it together and find a kind of concoction that works for her is the key going forward. But this is a good week for her. Back to Iga, Simon.
Just one point on Maria Sakkari before we move on. You want to know how short the years, the months are in tennis and how quickly things can change. We are exactly, the time of recording, within 2 days of it. When Maria Sakkari reached her career high of number 3, she did that in 2022. Sitting here in 2024, how the tables have turned and how different we view the Greek in terms of her ascension, her place at the top of the sport. Mm-hmm. This is still an exceptional talent. She's 28 years of age. She has shown her ability to compete at the highest level on hard courts. It's been a really rough few years for her. It really has. It's been pretty awful. If she's starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel, that I'm fully down for her because she seems like a pretty cool person and she has the ability. So hopefully this is a changing for her fortunes going forward.
This took me aback a bit, but she's younger than Jess Pegula, younger than Ons Jabeur. So yeah, I think to write anyone off at that age would be foolish. And this is a good week for her. Let's take a break, Bush. When we come back, we'll wrap up Indian Wells a bit more. Some more Iga talk, but we'll talk Novak losing to Nardi, more Emma Navarro, Sinner, plus parting shots coming up next. Welcome back to the Open Air Podcast, Bush. The people are wondering, how is that Guinness tasting?
I'm really struggling to get through this. This is awful. It's getting warmer and it's getting worse the more I'm drinking it.
The way you said it's getting warmer, as if it was a radioactive site growing by the second. It's getting warmer. Okay. Indian Wells, Simon, some news and notes. Just quickly on Iga. I said that 80% thing. What do you think about that? That whole idea of that number meaning something? Because I do feel like just on the sheer weight of evidence to go off of, it is quite a nice indicator, isn't it?
I think it is, yeah. I think there's a reason that the club of players who have managed to get to that number is so small, and it's basically all-time greats. There's no doubt about it at this point, right? There's no doubt that she is on track to be one of the best players who has ever played the sport. And I don't think that's hyperbole, Dev, is it? Like, just given the track record and the trajectory that we see for her, she's still only 22 years of age. I think she's still 22. Either way, like she's in that range. The stats jump off the page, do they not, in terms of what she's won already and in terms of her ability to keep going? Put it this way. If Carlos Alcaraz or Jannik Sinner has had the career at the age that Iga Swiatek has and has won as much, then we would be singing their praises and thinking they could have the opportunity to be one of the best of all time. There's no reason to not believe that about the poll either.
Yeah, shouts to our friends Vanch and Damien Kust who do the Iga and Carlos Tennis Show podcast, because great week for them. It's a great point, because Carlos basically has 2 more slams to his haul by the time he's 22, which is in 1 year. Then he'll be on Iga's turf. So as much as we praise both of them, there are levels to this. Iga, a phenomenal week there. Emma Navarro, Bush, I know you've been on her early, but another really strong week.
Yeah, really, really strong week. She has really cemented herself of being one of the best players in the world, like in terms of her success that she's had so far in the 2024 campaign. Like, just keep stringing match wins together across week after week after week. And I think the one obviously that stands out through the course of this week is the biggest scalp of her career, taking down Yana Sabalenka. She showed in that match, I think, the potential that if she continues to get more matches under her belt at tour level, at the top end of women's tennis, she has all kinds of ability, Dev. If she can see off Anya Sabalenka in the way that she did in this kind of setting at this stage, and the talent of this tournament, there's no reason to believe that this is not a top 5 player. And I know that's hyperbole, and I don't want to put more undue pressure on someone who's really, second year fully on tour. My goodness, Dev, there's a real talent here, and I think American tennis has really got one. Another good one.
The NCAA tournament, or NCAA Tennis Hive, grows even stronger with its latest product in Emma Navarro. It's interesting to see the American kind of crew where they net out now. I think I talked about this with the men a couple weeks ago, Bush. I'm like, they're kind of all grouped together, and I wonder who emerges out of that crew, if anyone. This scene on the women's side is different. Obviously, Coco's in the top 3. Jess Pegula is on a bit of a down run, but she's still in the top 10. But then you kind of have this next crew, and it features the familiar in Madison Keys and Sloane Stevens, but then you also have Emma Navarro there as well, Bush, who now I think is in the top 20 with this week under her belt, and she's not even 23 yet herself. So fantastic stuff. On the men's side, Bush, Novak Djokovic losing to Luca Nardi. Who?
Losing to Luca Nardi, and also completely and utterly embarrassing himself in the process here. So this was one of the strangest things that I have seen a player lose his mind over, and just really a kind of a bad look in general for a tournament that, I don't know. Okay, the backdrop of this is that Nardi's serving. Djokovic is serving. Nardi returns the ball, thinking the ball is long, on the serve. So he just kind of bunts it back into play. Nardi stops in the process because he thinks it's long. Djokovic comes in, there's a drop shot that hits, and Nardi wins the point. But Djokovic goes, he's so upset that he is ranting at the umpire. And the umpire is basically like, dude, in the equivalent of saying, like, play to the fucking whistle, dude. Nothing happened, keep going. Like, you're a professional athlete, stop this kind of behavior. Very, very odd look. In a sea of strange Novak Djokovic behavior over his career, this was one of the more like, dude, like, you're 37 years of age. You've played so many years on tour. Like, get on with it. Seriously.
I saw that. Yeah, it was. I don't know. That didn't even measure on the Novak scale for me. Of like, what's going on here? The whole match did though, because I was like, oh, okay, interesting. Because I think he's picking up sticks and skipping Miami now and going straight for clay as well. Which the invincibility shield is definitely weakened, Simon. Luca Nardi, that's late stage Fed, names like that.
Yes and no. I would say that's a little harsh, just given.
Yeah,
I think he's a really talented player. I don't know that he's, this is not someone who is going to be an all-time great player on the ascendancy, but I do think he's a very, very talented kid. Like, and I think he played exceptionally well as well to go up against his idol. He's giving it absolutely everything. Like he's quoted as saying that Novak Djokovic is his idol. So like this was his Super Bowl, this was his Champions League final, etc., etc. Dev, really, really strange year for Novak Djokovic. He's played 2 tournaments. Very, very odd. We're in March already.
Yeah, not exactly gearing up to be in his best position maybe for a really important summer. But then again, who knows? Like, I think the rest for him will be important. He seems to be hitting every NBA arena he can while in the States, meeting every NBA star he can. Steph, LeBron, Jokic. So at least he's having fun, I guess, in that regard. Also, shouts to Luca Nardi, who did the India Challenger swing as well. I think he made the final in Chennai, but he went to Bengaluru as well. I wasn't hating on him, but which I did feel like this was a why am I here loss for Novak. And once you start to have some of those, as in the what am I chasing kind of thing, the calculus gets a bit different for him. And I think he does like traveling around and doing stuff on his own time. So I don't expect him to play anymore. But whether or not he's the guy to be the favorite, I don't know.
Yeah, I said last year, now that he has secured just about every record in the book, like, are we getting to the Novak Djokovic phoning in tournaments? Like, I'm just here so I don't get fined. And I think when I said that, I think I was incorrect in the stage of his calculus. I think we might be there now, though. Like, judging from...
Maybe, yeah.
Judging from this, I think he's still going to go balls to the wall for every single Grand Slam, and I think he wants to win all of those. But every other tournament, I don't know, Dev. I think you're going to start seeing a few more Luca Nardis taking scalps here.
I'm with you. All right. Anything else, Indian Wells Bush, or should we get to party shots?
I don't think there's anything else other than I did enjoy the bees. So let's go to party shots.
The bees are good. Yeah, the bees are good.
I mentioned off the top that, we were just chatting about Emma Navarro being 22 and will be turning 23 in May. Coco Gauff has finally exited her teenage years, and the WTA wrote up an article about Coco Gauff as she turns 20 years of age. I think the thing that was obviously ridiculous to believe is that she has been on tour for 5 years, Dev. There are levels to this. It's absolutely wild. She enters the tour. Just the graph that the WTA has for this, the fact that we're talking about a player who's exceptional. I really do believe Emma Navarro is a very, very good player and is turning 23. But by the same standards, Coco Gauff was 110 in the world when she was 16. It's remarkable how good of a player that she was so early. So we are seeing an all-time great one, and she finally is no longer a teenager, and she has a Grand Slam under her belt. So I mean, talk about a player who's going to be around for a very long time. Yeah,
early days, but all things considered, how they've been able to navigate the pitfalls that are professional tennis from that age to now, and seemingly being able to do it well. And Coco Gauff seems like a genuinely good person as well, that millions of people around the world are rooting for pretty vehemently. And I think in that regard as well, just to latch onto the Alcaraz thing we were talking about earlier, I think Coco Gauff definitely is on that same level as well. And in terms of what's going to be next for her in the next few years, boy, oh boy, that's so much on her shoulders, but it looks like, and it seems like she can handle it. So happy birthday.
Shout out to her parents as well, right? Like, shout out to her family and support system around her. Like, you don't just, obviously her as a kid is exceptional. Like, the player and person, I think we've seen her be a great ambassador of the sport, and really for her generation as well. I think she stands out as that player who seems to be sort of highlighted as, you know, the voice of the generation on the WTA side of things, and maybe tennis in general. Actually, I think if you were going to pick one player to sort of say who would you most rather hear about the world, Carlos Alcaraz or Coco Gauff, I think I know which one I'm taking on that one. So just shout out to the camp in general.
I want to hear what these folks think of this TikTok ban that's going to go down, because I feel like there'll be some interesting responses from some of these tour people.
I really recommend everyone listen to the New York Times podcast episode on I think it's called The Death of TikTok. I think that's the name of the episode that came out last week or 2 weeks ago. And one of the things that I thought was, man, we're fucking sidetracked here, but allow me just for a second. It is parting shots. Come on, you've listened to the show long enough. You know,
it's the whole point. It's the whole point.
It's going to happen eventually. Okay, so like one of the interesting parts about it is that it's effectively like this. If you are constantly being served in an echo chamber and you're constantly having your content tailored to you over and over and over again, does that not reach a point of diminishing returns eventually, where like you just get bored because you're just being served everything you've been so micro targeted towards for like years? Eventually one day you sort of wake up and you're like, this is fucking boring. Like, there's literally nothing interesting here, and it's the exact same things over and over again. And I think that's kind of where this as a platform has landed.
This is not like tangentially related, but I've unwillingly and then willingly been going over to the For You tab more often on Twitter, and my God, the stuff in there. And then now I'm finding myself going there like unintentionally, just like as a habit. So it's working. Whatever sick tricks they're pulling with the algorithms, they're working. But I guess my larger point is that TikTok is no different than these other companies in terms of what they're doing. And of course, they're not the ones being legislated against because they can't use the Red Scare as the backdrop for all of this. But yeah, ask the kids what they think about TikTok.
Totally.
Ask Coco Gauff what she thinks. Yeah.
I think there's a really thin line though on that stuff. Like in terms of these companies are so good, and you know, they employ psychologists, they employ all these people to get the best understanding of how to keep people engaged with their platforms. I tell you what, though, it's an extraordinarily thin line once you start to see through the veil on it, and you're like, kind of seen this all before, and it's not really that interesting anymore. And like that is kryptonite to these companies. Like if you ever find a person getting into that stage, like the platform is dead. It's completely done at that point.
Players pretending to be tournament staff, Bush.
Okay, Indian Wells put out a video this week where several high-ranking players in the ATP and WTA partook in effectively layman's work. This was an interesting video, not least because it had Ons Jabeur in it. I saw, who else was in this? Holger Rune was in it. So there was a bunch of people. It's actually quite a good video. I think it's about 5 minutes long. It's worth watching and checking out. Some of the things that I thought was interesting was that some of the players were, in fact, so boring that
there was no reaction at all. Yeah,
there was no reaction from people.
Yeah, they're like, okay, yeah.
Which
this
I
seems
think
like,
maybe speaks to the fact that
exactly.
These kids maybe aren't that interesting.
The elephant in the room is that Holger Rune looks like he should be scanning my ticket to get in here.
Talk about that thin line on like the social media side of things. There's also a very thin line in terms of the, what do we want to call it? The veneer coming off for these players.
Yes.
Like that thin line between like, oh wait, no, this is just a very normal person. And Jannik Sinner could easily be scanning me one day and I wouldn't notice any difference between the two of them.
That would be the ultimate. Yeah. You get an email 3 weeks later. Oh, did you remember this interaction? Because that was actually number 8 seed Alex de Minaur that served you that ice cream cone. You idiot.
So out of the people that were in it on the ATP side, so you have Rublev, you have Medvedev, you have Rune, but the one that you mentioned him, de Minaur is the one that stood out to me because de Minaur is doing the parking job, right? So he's the one he's out directing cars being parked, and I'm like, that just looks like a fucking normal person. Like that just looks like a regular member of staff.
That's like he could do this. He could do this.
He looked pretty good at it.
He could do
as
this
well.
in a suburb of Melbourne at a big event for sure. I like this stuff though. More of this. Your favorite anniversary in tennis, Simon? It's the anniversary of Shut Your Fuck Up.
Man, you better shut your fuck up, okay?
Sure is. And I went back to the well to give myself a nice dopamine hit during the course of the week. Deb, I think this is something that we bonded over 5 years ago. I think this is.
It was. Also, it really laid the blueprint going forward. Like they both really leaned into to these rules.
I tell you what, I don't think there has been anything as funny as this in the last 5 years in tennis. Maybe you could argue some of the Novak Djokovic deportation stuff was equally as funny, like in terms of just the surreal. Like obviously him being deported is not that. Yeah, I just mean like the surreality of the whole thing. To have like the world number one being in a fucking detention center.
If you, for our listeners who may have forgotten because they're sane, but this is of course the incident between Medvedev and Stefano Tsitsipas. Do you think this had something to do with his beef with Holger Rune this week? Do you think he was trying to just play the hits a bit and develop a new younger foil?
Amazing. If that's the reason, then full shout out to him. You think someone sent him perhaps a TikTok or a Twitter video reminding him that this is the anniversary of it? It's like, nah, Holger Rune, this little shit.
Yeah. It's time to refine your passion, your love. I caught that Medvedev Rune thing late, so I was catching up on it. And it's one of those things, again, where the way I consumed it definitely messed up how I perceived it. And I definitely don't think I got the whole story here. So could you enlighten me, Simon, about this feud?
I don't think anything really happened here, honestly. Like, I thought it was a bit weird. It maybe perhaps got blown up more out of proportion than it actually was worth it. Effectively, so it's a classic backhand exchange. It ends with a drop shot. Medvedev's at the net and Rune just goes straight at him. So it's a classic, like, he double-handed backhand straight into Medvedev. You're going to pick a side or you're going to go at the player. And, 9 times out of 10, specifically in that position on court, you have to go at the player because they can't defend themselves. Medvedev does an incredible job of getting the ball back, actually, it has to be said, before Rune finally wins the point. And the fallout of it is that Rune gives a very quick apology saying, like, sorry, I didn't mean to go directly at you. Obviously, he did, but that's fine. But I don't think Medvedev sees it and then proceeds to go on a rant towards the umpire. I think basically what he was upset at, he did not hear that Rune apologized to him or made the gesture towards him, which is what the umpire was explaining. That being said, there is a potential chance that Danny Medvedev did hear him and also just wanted to get one over on him regardless. But I am playing into the conspiratorial theories here.
Yeah, and I think Medvedev also admitted he gets crazy, quote, I get mad to the umpire. I also think Med is in this situation now, or because he is one of the few guys who is A, good, but also B, a bit, he'll do his own thing. Anything he does becomes like a big thing on the court. I think Novak is a bit like this as well. It's a bit different though, because I think Med is like way more expressive and less plasticky in the sense of like he's not hiding as much. So you're really getting the full glimpse, warts and all. But yeah, I found this exchange confusing and then also a little too tennis Twittery for my liking.
It was fine. Overall,
yeah,
I thought it was fine. Everyone
was fine.
Everyone came across all right to me. Like, you're allowed to go at the player. You're allowed to be upset if someone doesn't apologize. He did apologize. Everyone went their separate ways. Good cricket all round. Handshakes.
Before we locate Kate Middleton, thoughts on the tiebreakers scoreboard they had, which was more visual for our visual learners. Did you like it?
I thought it was completely fine. Again, another one of those tiny Twitter like tennis moments that gets blown up out of proportion in terms of the discourse around it.
It looks like they just took soccer penalties, right, and then made it tennis style. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I don't really have sure.
Cool. Sure.
It looks
Even
great.
the question offended you. Even the fact that I asked it shocked you to your core. Okay, Simon, Kate Middleton at Indian Wells? Question mark.
Okay, so Tennis Channel, we almost never actually give shout-outs to social media in general to the kind of content.
I'm stunned they went this far. They went far, man. This is upsetting to me as a member of the Commonwealth.
So Tennis Channel, I think, has been on fire this week. There's no denying this at all. The content they've been putting out has gone far harder than I expected. So shout out to whoever is running that. Whichever 17-year-old is not being paid enough, and it's probably, bearing in mind that it's Tennis Channel, it's probably an unpaid internship. So I see you. I respect you. The post of Emma Raducanu with Kate Middleton in the box behind it, and the caption being, "Guys, we found her," is very funny on a number of levels. Not least because I didn't see Kate Middleton the first time I saw this photo, and I thought they were making a really tasteless joke about Emma Raducanu's form, that she actually made it to Indian Wells. I was like, fuck me, that's in bad taste. But at the same time, It works both ways.
That would have been way funnier, in my opinion. Damn. Okay. For that. I mean, yeah, I like how the brands were like, okay, we can do this. We can make fun of someone's disappearance / possible death. Okay, cool. Let's go all in. And then the Cheetos Instagram account is making a Kate Middleton joke. It's interesting what's cleared. But yeah, this was good. The bees stuff was also good. Yeah, they had their moment and they seized it.
So the patented open era predictions, because we're never wrong about this. Where do you think Catherine, Princess of Wales, is currently?
Where do I think Kate Middleton is? Okay, wow, all right. I didn't expect that angle. Okay, my theory is that they always had said that she would not reappear until after March 31st, right? But I think there's some issues between William and Kate, and that's why we're not hearing much. And I wish them all the best.
Just imagine that there's nothing between them at all. They're just in a loving relationship and everything's fine. No matter to endure.
She had I don't know what it in surgery entailed, but this is all fine, but I just, maybe the most royal family thing is that they put out the photo, said it was taken by William, and then said that the blame should be on Kate for editing it. Why couldn't he have edited it too? Why do they have to fully drive over her with it was her terrible editing? I don't get that.
Do you think it's kind of interesting at a maybe 2024 level of, we had basically decades where you couldn't say anything about the royal family at all. You would be...
And now we're making Weekend at Bernie's jokes about Kate.
And now Tennis Channel, the Tennis Channel Instagram is making a joke about...
Isn't it? I guess once the Queen really was holding it all together, wasn't she? Now that she's gone, people are like, you know what? Fuck it. We're going after them. We're going right after them.
I tell you what, they really missed the trick, didn't they, in the players pretending to be tournament staff video, to just fucking hide Kate Middleton in the middle of that video, scanning in passes to go into Indian Wells.
Let's get to 2 challenges remaining.
But before we get to 2 challenges remaining, I should mention, we had the friggin' Premier Tour leak and things that came out during the course of
yeah.
this week. Like one of the biggest stories potentially in tennis history. But I think we might wait till next week actually to talk about it because it's such a massive story. I just wanted to point out we acknowledge it. It's wild and it's going to be bonkers to kind of pick it apart. I think service level thoughts on this. It looks awful. It looks absolutely dreadful. So I look forward to talking to you about it and sort of regathering my thoughts on it for future episodes.
Yeah, might not be a tennis fan in the future anymore based on some of these reports. But yeah, we'll touch on it more in depth, obviously. I think there's some reports that seem to be quite live. So we'll see what develops there.
If Saudi Arabia buys the tour, do we have to stop? I think we have to stop podcasting, right? I think we have to stop talking about tennis. I think that feels like a pretty good hard out.
Yeah, probably. It would be the cleanest out. We'll see. We'll see what these guys cook out. We'll see what C. Tiley and the fam pull together here.
Alrighty. Let's get to 2 challenges remaining. Dev, I will go first. I wanted to give... so I went to go and see June 2. I had a good time. I'm using the British pronunciation because, screw North America. I say this is someone who carries a Canadian passport. It's pronounced June, not Dune. What the fuck am I talking about? Who cares? Besides, I thought it was actually really fun. Yeah, Jesus. Let's just cut all this. It's not important. Let's actually get to the important bit. This week, I think it's still this week, isn't it? In the context of the last 7 days, we saw the very sad and tragic passing of Akira Toriyama, creator of Dragon Ball, obviously familiar to many people, and a person who is going to be very, very missed, I would say, for his contributions to anime and manga more broadly. I think the outpouring of emotion and support that you saw from the entirety of South America, it looked like, in terms of national holidays being declared, in terms of just the overall warmth, I think, that Toriyama had towards the world. This is a really sad and sort of tragic passing and taken far too young, I think in his mid to late 60s. Much more to give to the genre in general. So yeah, it was a sad moment. And I wanted to actually just quote the end of this article. There's a Polygon article. Akira Toriyama never stopped growing up is the headline, written by Joshua Rivera. I thought his last paragraph was really nice. Quote, "It saddens me to know that Akira Toriyama isn't on the road with me anymore, that his journey is over so much sooner than I thought it would be. But I go on and so do you, as all the work of Toriyama leaves behind. I could follow it around the world, hearing Goku's name in every language. I haven't been back to Guatemala since the time I was there as a kid. I'd love to return. I'd love to see how everyone's grown and see if they remember watching Dragon Ball with me. I have the words now." And I think this is it speaks to more broadly how big the canvas was that Toriyama worked with, that there was a big, massive, long story, and at the heart of it was characters and people growing. So it's a sad day, but I wanted to give that a shout out here, Dev.
I love it. And I actually was going to shout out DBZ as well, because, yeah, I think it was one of the most important shows of my youth in terms of how much time I spent with it and what my friends and I watched and how we bonded over the insanely long arcs and the characters we loved, and the fact that when I go places around the world, Goku is one of the most recognizable people, like no matter where you are. When I went to Mexico City, one of the first faces I saw was Goku, and he was extremely popular there. And that's not just one place. I think it was the strength of this show that it was so beloved universally, and the fact that so many different cultures came to love it as well across so many different dubs that made the show have different lines and sometimes different meanings. It didn't matter. It still was able to connect with so many people. And it also opened the doorway into that kind of anime manga kind of world for me as well as a kid, Bush. So I had a lot of wonderful memories growing up with that show, and his passing definitely brought me back to waking up at 5 a.m. before school so I could watch episodes and then go. So rest in peace, good sir. And we will leave it there on this edition of Open Era. A reminder, we are on patreon.com/Open Era. Join us there, get the show ad free. Join us on the Discord where we're chatting tennis all the time, including Miami, the Sunshine Double wrapping up. We'll be talking about it on our Discord. So join us on patreon.com/Open Era. We're still on x.com/Open Era pod. So find us on there. And that's it for producer Dylan on the ones and twos. And for Simon, thank you so much for listening to Open Era. We'll talk to you soon.